Essence of Eternity. Chapter 1, Ideals of Change. The underworld, a cruel and dark place where demons live, beings full of hatred, resentment, and suffering. His great lord Bill ruled the underworld since long before the existence of humans, or so it was known. Those demons who served him enjoyed inflicting pain and suffering on the human souls that came to his realm, but there were demons who sought to steal his knowledge. Medusa, before part of the demonic royalty, was imprisoned and sentenced to exile for stealing knowledge from Bill. Since then she has sought to escape, because the knowledge that she stole spoke of the elemental kingdom, an ancient kingdom held as a myth that possessed great secrets that Medusa was willing to get. One of the royal demons took pity on her. Although he knew he couldn't convince Bill to free her, he decided to act on his own and free her without anyone knowing. When she was released, she was surprised to see that this mysterious demon helped her escape. Without saying a word, they ran to a discreet place where the demon created a portal to the human world. Without hesitation, Medusa entered while the demon felt that a guardian was approaching. Immediately it vanished, leaving the portal open. On the other side, Medusa had ended up on a rocky cliff. She managed to climb to the top, but the guardian went through the portal looking for Medusa. She could not fight because the bracelets on her hands contained her power. Finding herself cornered, she only backed away while a stranger passed by on the road. Medusa, turning around, observed a being with a black tunic covering her limbs that were bones without any meat. This was a necromancer. He didn't seem to have any intention of helping Medusa, so he continued on his way without looking to the left. Medusa, returning her gaze to the front, is hit hard by the guardian, hitting the rock wall very close to the necromancer, who points his eyes against an injured Medusa. After looking at it carefully, he observes that the guardian intends to ram them both. So the necromancer raises his eyes and walks towards the guardian to face him directly. Upon almost making contact, the necromancer opens a portal in the ground that he enters and opens another through on top of the guardian. Descending quickly, he makes a deadly cut to the guardian in the back. The badly wounded guardian tries to crush him, but the necromancer cuts off his hand and then concentrates his energy and cuts his body in half. After killing the guardian, he makes a movement of exhaustion, reflecting that this use of energy significantly exhausted him. He continued walking without looking at Medusa, who was still injured, but could walk. He told the stranger not to leave. He needed his help. The stranger replied that he had already helped him and that he didn't need him anymore. Medusa was insistent, and the stranger replied saying that his name was Krenox. Medusa, calling his name, asked him for help. She just wanted him to free her from the bracelets that contained his power. Once he freed her, she would leave him alone. Krenox observed the bracelets and said that they were made of dark titanium, a highly resistant metal that can only be shaped by a demon. He could take them off, but he had to offer him a payment in exchange for his release. Medusa thought about it and had no other option. To offer him the knowledge he had stolen from Bill. Medusa took out a scroll and showed it to Krenox. He looked at the scroll carefully and noticed that the map belonged to Bill because of the symbol it had. He stared at Medusa, turned his gaze and told her to follow him. They walked until they reached the kingdom of Alkmaar. Krenox offered Medusa his black tunic to hide from the eyes of others until they reached the interior. Upon entering Medusa, I observed the kingdom of Alkmaar and its lifestyle. Most of the human inhabitants came from other kingdoms, mostly from the kingdom of Gibraltar. Their worship of their demon masters was enough to keep them sane. Their different ranks were increasingly abominable. Krenox being the strangest of them all. After a while they walked until they reached the building where the king lived. They both entered and were greeted. Welcome. It was then that Medusa deduced that Krenox was the top leader of the necromancers. They entered and Krenox offered to Medusa if she wanted to sit down. She refused, so he sat down and began to manipulate his eyes a bit. Medusa impatiently asked Krenox to free her from the bracelets, to which he replied that he wanted to see the scroll again. Medusa agreed and Krenox analyzed this paper further. While analyzing the parchment, Medusa exclaimed, "Then you are the king of the necromancers?" Krenox replied something like that. She tried to understand with a confused face and couldn't help but ask. Krenox explained that long ago he led an army to attack the kingdom of Gibraltar, assassinating its supreme leader, taking control of the kingdom and preparing his troops to invade the surrounding kingdoms. But a group of magicians and adepts prevented these invasions from happening, failing in his attempt to conquer other territories and losing many soldiers on the march. Now he dedicates himself to trying to prosper with his kingdom and not be annihilated by the kingdom of Gibraltar. When he finishes explaining it, Krenox exclaims, "Well, you know who I am, now tell me." Who are you? My name is Medusa, and I was a member of the demonic order. I was exiled long ago for stealing sacred knowledge from Bill. Kreenox looked at her and asked her if you were imprisoned. Who released you? She could only answer a demon, which I don't know who it is. The conversation seemed to make Medusa desperate because she wanted to free herself from her bonds as soon as possible, and that necromancer seemed to be her only option to get her release. After spending some time analyzing the map, Kreenox became more convinced that this map was authentic and that the mythical kingdom of the elementals was real. He could no longer question Medusa's words, since this map contained the location of the kingdom, but he still had to decipher its exact location, which was going to take him considerable time. Medusa knew that he was trying to decipher it, so she exclaimed, "Don't waste your time deciphering it. I know its location, although it took me time to decipher the exact location of the elemental kingdom." Kreenox responded, "I am in no rush and have no interest in negotiating with you for that information." She looked at him with hatred, knowing that he was only using her, since he did not seem to have any intention of helping her to be free. Medusa exclaimed, "If you don't want information or my help, then why don't you release me?" Kreenox looked up with a smile and said, "The reason why you continue with those bracelets is because he trusted a lot in what is on paper, but he didn't trust you. You are a member of the demonic order. You earned the trust of our great Lord Bill just to steal sacred knowledge from him. The consequence was your exile, a punishment that you have not yet finished paying, and now, do you demand your release?" Despite what was said, she didn't seem to care in the slightest and said, "We made a deal, the scroll for my release." Kreenox let him know that he was aware of this, but the true source of his concern was Medusa's hidden intentions. "What exactly do you want?" Kreenox said. She just silently thought, knowing that she had no other choice to get her release, "I want a throne, to get back that life that was taken from me in my previous life." Hearing this, Kreenox responds with a high-pitched laugh and then says, "All women who love to be adored want a throne. They all want to always look perfect and don't care about the suffering of others. They are dangerous despite their unique beauty and lovely." Medusa knew that this necromancer was very intelligent and it was not going to be easy to recover his scroll and run away, but she could try to reason with him to reach a mutual agreement. "You want power, knowledge, and control. I want a throne. We both have similar ambitions, and although we think differently, we can help each other to achieve what is impossible for us." Kreenox thought about it for a moment and replied, "I won't be willing to give you my throne for the knowledge I need." Medusa exclaimed, "I do not need your throne. I want you to help me forge a kingdom and a powerful army that we can use to destroy the elemental kingdom." Kreenox mentioned that forging a kingdom and a powerful army were difficult objectives to achieve and required considerable time. They could not achieve it with so few resources, to which Medusa replied, "The scroll that is in your possession is not the only thing I stole from him. To the Great Lord I also managed to steal a summoning scroll from him." Kreenox, with the intrigue invading him, cannot help but ask, "And who does he summon?" Medusa replies, "To the great Mr. Bill." She briefly mentions that this scroll explains the correct way to summon Bill and ask for anything. The payment for a request to Bill was unknown, but Kreenox was willing to give anything by proxy. Motivated, Kreenox replies, "It's a fair offer, so I'll accept it. However, I will make sure that there are no betrayals between the two of us. We must make a sacred deal. A sacred deal between demons is unbreakable. If the other party intends to break it, they will receive a punishment executed personally by Bill." Medusa agrees to the deal and they shake hands, pledging allegiance. At the end of the handshake, Kreenox demands to see the summoning scroll, thus beginning his quest to build a kingdom and gain the knowledge of the elementals. Far away in the human territories, conflicts were provoked between the other kingdoms that wanted to progress. The most oppressed kingdom was called Eritrea. Their king Gregory was tired of the endless conflict and did not want to shed more innocent blood, so he traveled to one of the few kingdoms where he could be received peacefully, Sparta. The Spartans were highly trained soldiers for hard combat. Although their rudeness was extreme, their honor was more important than their lives. King Gregorio arrived in Sparta with the hope of making an alliance with the kingdom. Eterios, the king of Sparta, understood Gregorio's concern, because like him, he did not want to shed innocent blood. The kingdoms sought to progress, but the constant conflict was inevitable. Although Eterios understood Gregorio's concerns, he refused to accept an alliance with Eritrea. Eterios said, "Sparta cannot make an alliance with an inferior kingdom. If the surrounding kingdoms find out about our actions, we could unleash an even worse war. It is better not to give the enemy reasons to enter into conflict." Gregorio replied, "Eritrea is not a kingdom inferior to Sparta. Each culture has its own The king of Eritrea was not going to allow such an offense. Etereos replied, if they really trust to be up to our standards, then we should check it. Displeased with the proposal, Gregorio immediately refused, saying, I can't allow it. The purpose of my visit is to attempt an alliance with your kingdom. I don't want to send my men to die just to define who has the greatest military power. Etereos replies, then let's make a deal. If your men manage to defeat my soldiers in a friendly battle, then Sparta will accept an alliance with Eritrea. But if your men are defeated, you will never set foot on these lands again. King Gregory thought about it for a moment while observing his surroundings, and without further hesitation said, my forces will engage in friendly combat with the Spartans. I only ask that there be no deaths in this battle. Etereos accepted, and they closed the deal with a strong handshake. Gregorio returned to his kingdom and told his soldiers about the deal he had made with the king of Sparta. They were willing to do their best to achieve an alliance with Sparta. The battle was going to take place in 4 days, and the commanders had to place their best soldiers in front. As King Gregory and his soldiers waited for the day of the match to discuss the high level of combat the Spartans had, it was clear that the soldiers of Eritrea were not as disciplined and skilled as the Spartans, but their sword skills, they could be effective. King Gregory was an experienced swordsman who could easily face a Spartan and defeat him, but Etereos forbade the commanders to participate in the battle alongside their soldiers, as this battle was to test the effectiveness of the soldiers in both kingdoms. After the discussion, Gregorio motivates his troops so that they do not see their adversaries as superiors but as worthy opponents. Gregorio said the Spartans are tough, skilled, and very lethal adversaries. But we swordsmen of Eritrea have our strength in our sword and in our numbers. Overwhelming the enemy will be the key to this battle, and I am very confident that it will be so. Highly motivated, his soldiers raised their swords and raised their voices to honor the wise words of their king. The next day, the soldiers and Gregorio arrive at the meeting point for the battle. In the distance, they can notice the presence of the Spartans formed and prepared. King Etereos advances to the center of the field together with his escort to exchange words with Gregorio. Being face to face, Etereos says, before starting the battle, we must make it clear that our soldiers will not fight to the death. My warriors will try to take out yours and your warriors too. I am confident that they will be up to the task. At the end, Gregorio and Etereos shake hands and then return to their positions and watch the battle. The Spartans had a force of 10 men, while Gregorio's forces had 20 men. The Spartans began advancing slowly towards the swordsmen, who still refused to break their formation. After advancing half of the field, they stop and wait for the response of the swordsmen, of which the first row advances while the second does so a little late. Nearly reaching the Spartans, the first-rank swordsmen slam their swords into the Spartans' spear formation, knocking them out of position, at which point the first-rank swordsmen kneel and help the second-rank push off and cross the wall of shields, thus initiating a multiple clash of swords against the shields of the Spartans. The swordsmen managed to take several Spartans out of combat, but they managed to take out all the swordsmen. Wounded, they leave the battlefield so that later the next wave of swordsmen advances, carrying out a different deployment from the previous one, while the Spartans had only 6 men willing to put up a better fight than before. They throw their spears at the swordsmen, separating them and charging at them. The swordsmen advanced together and faced the onslaught of the Spartans, who protected each other. However, the swordsmen charged hard at them, knocking them off balance and giving them the opportunity to another swordsman to land a blow. In the end, 9 Spartans were taken out of combat and the swordsmen failed to defeat them. King Gregorio had to accept his bitter defeat, but King Etereos approached the field to exchange words with Gregorio again and tell him, I greatly admire the courage of your soldiers. I was wrong. Eritrea is not a kingdom inferior to Sparta. They are worthy opponents to our strength, and today they have earned our respect. Our warriors have already demonstrated their efficiency in combat. It is time for the commanders to demonstrate theirs. Etereos challenges Gregorio to a fight. Without hesitation, Gregorio accepts the challenge, drawing his sword and moving into position. Etereos raised his shield and quickly advanced to attack Gregorio. He dodged the attack and then hit his spear and counterattack. Their fight was brutal and fast. Finally, Gregorio managed to disarm Etereos, who, defenseless, accepted his defeat. They shook hands, thus creating the alliance between both kingdoms. Etereos said, from today Sparta will have an alliance with Eritrea, and also today they will have our respect and admiration for their courage. At the end of these words, Gregorio thanks him and turns around to return to Eritrea with his soldiers. Upon arriving and hearing the news, his people began a celebration in honor of their king Gregorio, who fulfilled his goal of achieving an alliance with Sparta. But King Gregory had no time for celebrations, as there was still much to do. His goal of unifying all the kingdoms was far from complete. The alliance with Sparta was just the beginning, but he was willing to continue without delay and without fear. Meanwhile, Kreenox was dedicated to obtaining the resources required for the summoning of Bil, and Medusa provided some discipline to some soldiers from Kreenox's kingdom, since Medusa had excellent swordsmanship. They already knew about the deal that Medusa made with their king, and they agreed that she would help them so that their kingdom progressed without delay. The summoning ritual for Bil was complicated for Kreenox, since his requirements were high, and although they did not require sacrifices of any kind, they were still strange for necromancers, since they had always invoked demons of royalty with sacrifices or offerings of souls. Pure for favors, the requirements for Bil's invocation was to gather numerous gold objects, precious stones, and place everything in a circle of fire. Bil's invocation began by setting fire to all these objects within the circle. If they were to be completely consumed, then it would close the portal, ending the invocation. Kreenox had to make sure he had enough time and objects to make his request to Bil. Once the objects have been obtained and gathered in a circle, Kreenox prepares to start the invocation without the presence of Medusa. He sets fire to all the gold and precious stones. While they were being consumed, a portal opens under all that incandescent fire. Kreenox managed to see how Bil came out of the portal and stood on top of all the fire that continued to consume the objects. Without hesitation, Kreenox says, "Great Lord, I want to make a request." Before continuing, Bil interrupts him, saying, "It was Medusa who gave you the scroll so that you could invoke me. She still has a punishment to pay in the underworld. But their actions do not affect yours at all. I will be willing to comply with your request if you are willing to pay for it." At the end, Kreenox asks Bil to grant him control over the Stalkers, an ancient army of monstrous beasts that inhabit only the underworld. Kreenox wanted to obtain them because their number was enormous. Bil mentioned that the entire army of Stalkers could only be controlled by a being of extraordinary mental strength, and seeing that Kreenox was in a state of recovery after a battle in the past, he made it clear that he could only possess a portion of this army. Kreenox accepted and gave him control of his minions on the condition that at some point, he should serve in the underworld. Moments later, the portal began to turn off because the objects were being completely consumed. Bil left, and Kreenox, with control of the Stalkers, could easily attack kingdoms and cities without worrying about the losses, as the Stalkers upon death could be brought back to life with the energy of a dark sorcerer. In this way, Kreenox took the objective of finding more resources for an upcoming summoning ritual, because he wanted to obtain more power. Sometime after the Kreenox ritual occurred, the Kingdom of Gibraltar, made up of magicians and adepts, was informed that various towns and cities were being attacked by wild beasts. The Kingdom of Gibraltar was always passive towards the other kingdoms, as they always longed for peace, helping the people who needed it most and helping the towns or cities that suffered attacks. Upon learning of the attacks, they sent a group of adepts and magicians to help the affected people, but they could not see the attackers anywhere. The city was part of the territory of the Abidjan. This was a territory of mercenaries who were engaged in negotiations of all kinds. The affected inhabitants mentioned to the sorcerers that the attack was perpetrated by a necromancer who controlled the beasts, stole various resources from them, but what they wanted most was gold. After helping the people, they promised them protection until they rebuilt their homes. Meanwhile, Kreenox and his warriors returned to the Kingdom of Alkmaar to organize the stolen resources and plan a next attack. Upon entering, he is greeted by Medusa, who tells him, "No doubt you are enjoying the power they gave you." Kreenox, with a smile on his face, replies, "Not only am I enjoying it, my kingdom will grow abundantly again, but I need more power to control my enemies." Medusa gives a smile and realizes that her ideals match perfectly. Her goal of building a powerful army was close to being achieved. This has been the first episode of Essence of Eternity. Leave me a like to know if you liked it, and subscribe to be aware of the next chapters. Thanks a lot.